Old Town was the first ever trading post of the Firstmen, and after thousands of years, Old Town is still the largest, richest, and the most beautiful city in all of Westeros. The true age of this city is still debated at the Citadel, and the true history of its formation might never be known. However, what is known is that the first men migrated to the mouth of the Honeywine during the Dawn Age, but it is possible that the Children of the Forest had also held a settlement in this region that preceded that of the first men. The biggest mystery in Old Town is the origins of the stony island, called the Battle Isle, on which the Black Fortress and the High Tower were constructed. The Black Fortress, that precedes the High Tower by several centuries, is probably the most intriguing structure in Old Town. Both the High Towers and the Maesters of the Citadel are awed by this ancient square fortress. This formidable structure serves as the foundation of the High Tower, but no one knows who built it or why it was constructed. However, some Maesters theorize that it was constructed by the Valyrians due to the fact that it holds similar characteristics to structures that were built by the Valyrians at the height of their empire. Whereas it's possible that the Valyrians constructed the outer walls of this fortress, its inner layout suggests that it was made by the maze makers, who were an ancient race of people from Loroth in Essos. If it is indeed the case that the Valyrians and the maze makers constructed this fortress, it is still unknown why they built it. However, it's possible that the Valyrians held a prophecy that they would fight the Great Other in Westeros, so they constructed this fortress that would later act as a base from which they would fight the forces of the Great Other when the need arose. The Valyrians and the Maze Makers first had to fight a fierce battle in order to take the island on which they wanted to construct this Black Fortress. This is because the island might have been held by forces of the drowned god, who is hinted in the books to be one of the servants of the Great Other. After the battle was won and the fortress was later on constructed, the Valyrians and the Maze Makers would return to their respective homes of Valyria and Lorath, and they left the Children of the Forest to guard the fortress. Centuries later, the ancestors of House Hightower would forcefully take the Isle and the Black Fortress from the Children of the Forest without knowing its true purpose. The ancestors of House Hightower would first use the Black Fortress for habitation, but they would eventually construct a wooden tower atop the Black Fortress that was at first meant to be a beacon for trade ships entering Old Town. Centuries later, during the reign of King Uthor of the High Tower, the wooden tower would be replaced with a stone brick tower, and this construction was headed by Brandon the Builder. House Hightower was formally established during King Uthor's reign, and the Hightowers would eventually dwell in the High Tower once it was completed. However, the long-prophesized apocalypse of the Long Night would eventually devastate the world of ice and fire, but whether the Black Fortress was used during this conflict is unknown. The forces of men were eventually able to defeat the armies of the dead, and the Hightowers would reclaim their kingdom afterwards. For 1,000 years, the Hightowers ruled their kingdom of Old Town as kings, and within this time, Old Town grew to be the most important region in the whole of Westeros. But the fame and wealth of Old Town would draw the attention of pirates and petty kings that either wanted to raid or conquer it. In a single century, Old Town was destroyed by King Samwell Dane, who is remembered as the Starfire, King Cord Hor, who was dubbed as the Cruel, and King Giles I, remembered as the Foe. After this dark century, King Arthur II Hightower spent most of his reign constructing massive curtain walls to surround the city, replacing the wooden walls that had failed to protect Old Town. Though this great endeavor bankrupted Old Town, the new stone curtain walls kept the city safe from would-be conquerors and reavers. The Hightowers, under King Lymond Hightower, would bend the knee to King Garland the bridegroom, but this was done through marriage pacts, not conquest. With this pact, King Garland pledged that he and his descendants would protect Old Town from any attack on land, and this freed the Hightowers to focus their energies on constructing a powerful fleet that rivaled that of the Ironborn. Despite bending the knee to the Gardener Kings, Lymond the Sea Lion and his descendants would mostly ignore the political intrigues of Highgarden and the rest of the Reach, for they were contented with Oldtown. During the rule of Lord Jason Hightower, the wealth of Oldtown was quadrupled, which made it possible for him to add another 100 feet upon the Hightower. When the Andals came to Westeros, the Hightowers followed the example set by King Garth IX Gardener as they chose to welcome the Andals to Oldtown rather than fight them. Lord Dorian Hightower was the first Lord of Oldtown to marry an Andal princess, but he had to first set aside his wife of 20 years. His grandson, Lord Demon Hightower, who is remembered as the Devout, was the first Hightower to worship the Seven, and he constructed the first sept in Oldtown. When Lord Demon died at a young age, Septon Robson became the sole regent of Lord Demon's infant heir, and Robson ruled Oldtown in all but name for 20 years. In later years, Septon Robson became the first ever High Septon in Westeros. Lord Treston Hightower, who had been raised by Septon Robson, constructed the Starly Sept in Oldtown to honor Robson after his death. Over the centuries, Oldtown would become the center of the faith of the Seven, and the High Septon would become the leader of all the faithful. When the Conqueror and his sister wives came to Oldtown, the Lord of Oldtown at that time, Lord Manfred Hightower, was urged by the High Septon not to fight the Dragon Lords, and Manfred wisely opened the gates of the city to Aegon Targaryen. This action saved Oldtown from ruin, but 45 years later, a conflict arose between the Iron Throne and Oldtown. In this, Maegor the Cruel, who was the ruling monarch of Westeros at the time, had decided to take multiple wives, which was against the teachings of the Seven. The faithful across Westeros had also taken offense to the continued practice of incest in House Targaryen, which they viewed as an abominable act. All of this led to bitter conflicts between the Iron Throne and the faithful, and tens of thousands of the faithful lost their lives when King Maegor and his mother, the Dowager Queen Visenya, laid waste to various towns and villages in the Riverlands and the Reach. Oldtown itself might have faced the fury of the two Dragon Lords had the zealot High Septon, who had led the condemnation of the Targaryens and their practices, not died under mysterious circumstances. After the death of this foolish High Septon, Lord Martin Hightower, who was the Lord of Oldtown at the time, welcomed King Maegor and the Dowager Queen Visenya to Oldtown, which saved the city. The Hightowers would continue to serve the Targaryens faithfully, staying out of the political affairs of King's Landing until Sir Otto Hightower joined the small council during the reign of the old king, King Jaehaerys Targaryen. Though Sir Otto was a competent leader, he was also an overly ambitious man who sought to have a Targaryen with Hightower blood on the Iron Throne. And Sir Otto was able to achieve his goal when he arranged the ascension of his grandson, Aegon the Elder, to the Iron Throne after the death of King Viserys I. Sir Otto's ambition was one of the many causes of the destructive war remembered as the Dance of the Dragons, and this war could have led to the destruction of Oldtown if Queen Rhaenyra's dragons had descended upon it. But though the city was spared the horrors of dragonfire, several Hightowers died in the Dance of the Dragons, and tens of thousands of its citizens died on the battlefield. After the dance, the Hightowers would yet again involve themselves in the political matters of Westeros, when Lord Jon Hightower manipulated King Aegon the Unworthy into making him the Hand of the King. However, when King Aegon's rightful heir, Daeron the Good, inherited the Iron Throne, Lord Jon was banished from King's Landing in favor for more morally competent lords. Despite his banishment, Lord Jon would remain influential in the political matters of Westeros, for he supported both the Targaryens and the Blackfyres in the First Blackfyre Rebellion. Lord Jon's descendants would prove to be more honorable than him, and Sir Gerald Hightower was one such example. Sir Gerald joined the King's Guard at a young age, and he would serve the Targaryens faithfully, that he would later on be named as Lord Commander of the King's Guard. During the War of the Nine Penny Kings, Sir Gerald would fight for House Targaryen, and he even assumed command of the Targaryen forces after the death of Lord Ormond Baratheon. Sir Gerald would remain loyal to the Mad King Aerys Targaryen during Robert's Rebellion, and he died fighting for House Targaryen at the Battle of the Tower of Joy. The current Lord of Oldtown, Lord Leighton Hightower, fought for the Targaryens during Robert's Rebellion, but he bent the knee to King Robert when the Targaryen dynasty was destroyed. In the past decade, Lord Leighton has hardly left his precious Hightower, but Leighton's forces still followed his Tyrell overlords during the War of the Five Kings, when the Tyrells chose to support King Renly Baratheon. Lord Leighton would yet again follow the Tyrells when they decided to follow King Joffrey Baratheon. In more recent events, Lord Leighton is occupied with reviewing ancient texts with his favorite daughter Melora Hightower, but danger looms as the ancient enemies of Oldtown, the Ironborn, are sailing to the city in order to destroy it. Though Lord Leighton has ordered his eldest sons to prepare the defenses of the city, it might not be enough to stop King Euron's Iron Fleet and whatever evils from the sea he might call upon to aid him when he finally arrives at Oldtown. When King Euron attacks Oldtown, will he be able to sink the city into the sea, or will the Black Fortress help the Hightowers to hold out until aid comes? But a question of whom the savior of Oldtown will be must also be asked, and the answer to that question only lies in the winds of winter. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.